Alright, so today I'm going to take a look at the CSS Box model and how we could use it to add some style to our web page. I'm going to start by opening up the terminal and creating a new project here. I'm going to call that project CSS Box Model uh, and change our directory into that new folder. I'm going to also create a couple of files to work with here, index.html and style.css. And if I open up this folder that I'm currently in Sublime Text, here we have it, our index and our style. They're both empty files right now. So I'm going to start by adding some basic content into into the HTML file. So let's get that done quickly. And I'm going to use a Sublime Text plugin called Emmet, which is great for scaffolding HTML quickly. Let's get article tag with 4 paragraphs and some filler text. And I'm going to also, just for clarity, add a bit of spacing between our paragraphs. Now if we open this up in Google Chrome, you'll see that we have our document, but in addition there is some default styles that Chrome itself has put in. So one here is that our text for our header is a little bit bigger than our regular text. In addition, the header has some space above and below it that Chrome has put in. Additionally, each paragraph is separated by some space above and below it as well. And there's some spacing in the document as a whole along the borders to give our document a bit of padding in between it, just so that the content doesn't touch the edge of the screen. So let's get rid of all of that. So we're only going to be working with just our own CSS in the long run. To do so, I'm going to use a spreadsheet called reset.css, which was created by a guy named Eric Meyer. We can find his website here, and through this link, a copy of the file, we can see the style sheet. So I'm going to copy the URL, go back into the terminal, and I'm going to use curl to grab that style sheet and put it into my project here. And if we go back into Sublime Text, we see we have his reset.css file. Now one thing I want to do, just to organize the project a little better, is create a CSS directory, and I'm going to move reset into that directory, and I'll also move my style.css into that folder as well. We can see in Sublime Text they're both moved in, which is great. Now the next step here is to make sure that we're linking to both of them from our index.html. So I'm going to quickly get that in there, and we want to make sure to always have the reset first, because the CSS will load in the order that we specify, and we want to make sure that reset is always done first before our own styles are applied. So both of those links are in. Things look good. I'm going to open them up in Google Chrome and see how this looks once I refresh. Alright, so we can see here that all of our text looks the same. They're separated still by their different HTML tags. They're all still block level elements, but no spacing and no custom styling on them. So the first thing I want to do is get a bit of color on it to separate some of these elements, and use that to indicate what each element's size really is. So let's get the web asphalt color here, and we're going to use that for the let's use it for the H1. So oops. Here we go, and I'm going to put in some white text to our H1, and here we have it. You can see along the top our H1 now has a different background and a different color. Just because headers should stand out a little more, I'm going to also make the font size about 4 M's, and that should be sufficient here. Perfect, looks good. Now let's work with padding. So padding is one property that gets factored into the box model. And the way it works is it's going to add some more space within our box itself, within everything you saw in that background color, but it's going to be sort of giving our content the text in our case, a bit of space between the edges of the box. So I'm going to start with the top of the box and give it a padding of 50 pixels. And so let's take a look at how that looks right now. That looks pretty good. It bumped it kept the background for the padding, which is important to note here, and it gave us a bit of space above our content. So let's add in some padding on the other sides as well. So on the right side, and notice we are going to go from the top, and we're going to go clockwise. This is a pattern that is really important in the box model. So on the right side, I'm going to give it some padding of 75 pixels. On the bottom, 50 pixels, and on the left, 75 more pixels. And let's take a look at how that's changed. All right, perfect. So we have 50 on the top and the bottom, 75 on the right and the left, although you can't really tell here too much from what's happening on the right side because we're still at 100% of the width of the page. Now, one thing I want to change here, just so it becomes a little bit more clear what's going on, we're going to also add a fixed width. Now this is going to be the width of the content itself. The padding that we have on the right and the left is going to be in addition to whatever number we put here. So we have a width of 600, but with 75 on the right and 75 on the left, that's really going to be a total width of 750 pixels. We have to add up the 600 plus 75 plus another 75. This is the right and the left. So I'm going to remove that text now. Take a look. All right, perfect. Now that gives us a much more clear idea of what's going on with our box. But we also have the box touching the top and the left side, as well as the text, the content directly below it. And we want to space it out a little bit. So to do that, we're going to adjust the space outside of the box using a margin. And let's take a look here at how we do so. So the margin top, I'm going to give it a 25 pixel margin. On the right, it'll be, I'm going to go with 100 pixels. On the bottom, it'll be 25 pixels. And on the left, just to keep things symmetrical, let's go with 100 pixels as well. So let's take a look at how that looks. All right, looks a little better. Now there is one thing you can do with CSS that with the margins in particular, and there's a different value we can have for the right and the left margins, and we can just say auto. Now what this is going to do is we're going to have Chrome determine exactly what our right and left margins should be to center the element, which we know is now 750 pixels. We're going to center that element on our page. So if we go back here and we refresh, we have that whole element centered, the whole box. Now I'm going to also just align the text center within the box just to make it a little bit nicer. All right, that looks great. Now, the other property that we have to work with here on the box is the border. So the border is between the padding, which is inside the box, and the margin, which is outside. The border is directly in the middle. So let's give it a 10 pixel border, and this is going to be a solid color. So you have to put solid. Other values you could use are dashed and dotted, for example. And I'm going to take the color that we use as the background. I'm just going to remove that background altogether and put that in as our border. So let's take a look at how this looks now. Oh, the text disappeared. Let's make sure we give that a better color. Perfect. So there we have it. The border is there. We still have our padding inside the box, and we still have our margin outside the box. And the border is really helpful for giving you an idea of like how those padding and margins are separated. Now we can continue to use these ideas to, or these methods rather, to adjust the paragraphs that we have below. So I'm going to quickly add in some styles for that as well. Now, if we want to add a padding around our each individual paragraph, of which we have 4, we can add them in one single line rather than saying top, right, bottom, and left all on 4. So I'm going to give this a padding of 10 pixels on the top, 0 on the right, 10 pixels on the left, and 10 pixels on the bottom and 0 on the left. So let's save that, and here we have it. Now there is a bit of repetition here with, or rather a pattern that we've developed with 10 pixels and then 0. If we remove the last property and we just have 3, then we're specifying the top, right, and bottom, but not the left. The browser is smart enough to know that whatever we have specified as the second number is also going to be the same as the fourth one if we leave out the fourth number altogether. Similarly, we can remove the third, and we just have the same pattern repeated. So it will go 10 pixels 0, and then 10 pixels and 0 for the bottom and the left as well. So take a look here. Everything stays the same. And let's add a background for our, or rather for the article that the paragraphs are contained within. Let's go and grab one from our Flat UI Color website. And let's take a look at it here. All right, great. Now, I don't really want those paragraphs spanning the full width of the page, so I'm going to give them a fixed width as well. So let's give the article a width of 750 pixels, because that's how we now know that's the total width of the top. However, we did add a 10 pixel border to the top, so I kind of want the articles to span the full. That we have to add an additional 10 for the right and the left. So I want the article to span the full width of the header. So I'm going to make it 770. So let's take a look at that. All right, and we can now use the margin technique of using automatic margins to put in one on the right and the left and center this whole block, and there we have it. It's perfectly centered and perfectly aligned with our header. Now the one last thing is we can still see our text is very much up against our edge of the box, and we might want to have a little bit of padding. So let's go back into our text editor and let's give a padding of 30 pixels. So let's take a look at what the result's going to be here when we do that. You see, it's no longer aligned because we've added an additional 30 pixels on either side. So if we want to keep this perfectly the same size as our header, we're going to have to subtract both 60 pixels rather from the whole box just to bring it down to the same size as our header. So I'm going to go here and let's reduce this to 710 from 770 and take a look. Perfect, looks great again. And I think this document's looking pretty good. So I'm going to end the video here. If you have any questions, please post them in the comments. I'll be happy to answer. If you'd like to keep up and follow any additional videos I make in the future, follow me on Twitter. My Twitter handle is @Michael_Fick, and please do subscribe to my YouTube account as well. Thank you very much.